All right. Shkoyach everybody for coming this week. It's a great honor that I'm after Rabbi Finger, so I have a crowd. So thank you again for coming. I just want to come off a line that Rabbi Finger mentioned. He mentioned B'Shem the Kotzker, that the last Galus will be America, if I'm quoting right. He just said that?
Yeshua's father.
No, not the Leshem. The Baal Shem.
American
So he said
place
that.
called America.
So, just want to come off a story about the Kotzker. The Kotzker was, his name is Kotzker because he was like the Saraf Mikotsk. He was from Kotsk, the city. He was called the Saraf from Kotsk, the burning fire, like a Saraf. How would I? Saraf could be either a Malach, but it also means
Saraf is an angel, a fiery angel.
A fiery angel. Fiery angel from Kotsk. Very interesting about the Saraf from Kotsk, the Kotzker, he's an extremely sharp person, and there was no, what is it called, like mediocrity is the word? There's no, everything was, till then, no kulos, no anything, there's no compromising with anything. But one very, very interesting thing about him is we have like no literature from him, nothing written from him as far as I know. Now his son-in-law was the Avnei Nezer, and the Avnei Nezer was one of the great poskim which lived, I guess, about 150 years ago. And he writes in the Hakdama, the Sefer, that everything he did was his father-in-law, which was the Kotzker, taught him. He told him how to learn and how to do everything. But from the Kotzker himself, there's no literature. But something very famous about the Kotzker was he wrote a lot. He wrote every night down Chidushim, and then the next morning, he burnt it. Huh? Literally, he burnt it. He used to write down Chidushim, and the next morning he burnt it. I mean, maybe that's why they called him the Sarah from Kotzk.
How was he allowed to do that?
Great question. So, what's your name again? Israel, which spoke here a few weeks ago, is asking, how is he allowed to do that? How can you burn down Chidushei Torah that you wrote? Doesn't make any sense, right? So that's just a story about the Kotzker, and that's one story, one just to share with everybody, and we'll see in a minute. Another thing, someone asked me for a topic, so I have to. Finally, someone asked for a topic. He said that I spoke about Shnai Mikra in the past, and maybe it could be a little chizuk. So this week, it's Ve'ele Shemos. I think it's the Baal HaTurim. I meant to look it up, but I remember it's the Baal HaTurim that says Ve'ele Shemos is Shnai Mikra Ve'echa Targum. Rashi Tevil's Shemos is Shnai Mikra Ve'echa Targum. So the famous question is, why here there's the Rashi Tevos for Shnai Mikra Ve'echa Targum? Shnai Mikra Ve'echa Targum, you have to start by Bereshis. Why is it only... why are we saying this remez only by Shemos? So, answer is, the famous answer is, by Bereshis, everyone are doing it. Comes Shemos, people are slowing down, they lose their cheshek, they lose their interest in saying it, and you get extra chizik from this Rashi table. So that's why it's only by Shemos. So these two inyanim that I just mentioned will try to tie together. That's because it's this week's parsha, and that's because the story about the Kotzker. But we'll try connecting everything together. So we'll start. There's a famous Gemara, a very interesting Gemara, and I think it's something which, while I was preparing for this year, I did not know the extreme of the importance of this Gemara. The Gemara says the following.
Where's this Gemara?
Gemara in Maseches Tmura, Daf Yudal Amud Beis. This Gemara also is in other places. It's in Gittin, Daf Samach. And the Gemara says the following: Darash Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nachmani Miturgemunei de Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nachmani, he was a turgeman. So back in the day, the way it was is they didn't have a microphone like here, you could put it on video. And by the way, it's very scary because whatever I say, I feel like it's, in Rosh Hashanah they say everything's up there. Anything I say, one day people pull up, you said, so it's very scary. But in those days, there was no microphone, there was no anything. So the rabbi used to speak, and I guess there was a guy that also he knew the language, Meturgamine, he knew the language of the people maybe a little better. He was like a Turgaman, used to say in the language of Aramaic. And many times it's mentioned that they had a very loud voice. So the crowd was huge. Let's say there was a Siyum Hashas back in the day, and there was the main speaker, or not even the main speaker, getting up and speaking. So how would everyone hear it? So they had a guy with an extremely loud voice, maybe with big lungs or some, I don't know what was the thing. And that person used to yell out what the rabbi used to say. He used to say very quiet, basically that only the few people could hear, or even said as loud as he could, but there was some limit. And then this Meturgamon, which had a more rich language maybe, or just a louder voice, he used to go ahead and deliver it to everybody. So this person, he was Rabbi Yehuda ben Nachmani. He was also an extremely big Talmud Chacham, and he said in the name of Reish Lakish, Kasuv Echad Omer. One pasuk says, Ksov lecha es hadvarim ha'ele. Write down these things that I'm telling you. Kasuv Echad Omer, Ki al pi hadvarim ha'ele. It's talking about the bris that Hashem is giving chorus with Bnei Yisrael. Al pi hadvarim ha'ele, which the Gemara understands. Al pi hadvarim ha'ele means he told it to him Baal Peh. He did not write it. There's a lot of things that were given al pi, which means al peh. So one pasuk says Ksav lecha es hadvarim ha'ele, everything should be written down. And another pasuk is telling you that there was a lot of things that were given Baal Peh, which kind of, if we'll translate to our language, there's Torah shebichsav and there's Torah sheBaal Peh. But the Gemara presents it as a question. How could it be? One pasuk tells you Dafka al Peh, and one pasuk tells you Dafka b'ksav, we wrote everything. So the Gemara answers the following. Lo Omer lecha, to teach you. Dvarim sheBaal Peh, things which are Baal Peh, Iyat harashai le'omram b'chsav. Anything that's Baal Peh, that was given Baal Peh, any Torah sheBaal Peh, you're not allowed to deliver it b'chsav. V'sheb'ksav, anything that's b'chsav, which means Pashtus, Tanakh, Iyata rashai le'omram al Peh. You're not allowed to say it al Peh. Yeah? Famous Gemara, we know, there's Torah shebichsav, there's Torah sheBaal Peh. Don't mix the two. Torah shebichsav is Torah shebichsav, and you cannot say it Baal Peh. Torah sheBaal Peh, you cannot write down. You cannot write down or read it from writing down. This is what we said, B'Shem Reish Lakish. Now, okay, it sounds good, right? Nice Gemara. Just read a few lines before that in the Gemara. Omar Rabbi Abba, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Kosvei halachos, whoever writes down halachos, which means Torah sheBaal Peh, Kesoref haTorah, it's as if he's burning the Torah. This is a Gemara. Someone that writes down halachos, it's as if he's burning the Torah. V'halamed meim, if you learn from something you wrote down, iyata notel schar, you do not get schar. This is fascinating. Again, Torah sheBaal Peh. If you write down, it's as if you burnt the Torah. Again, as if you burnt a Torah. What's the connection? What does it mean as if you burnt the Torah? You wrote down something, why is it like burning Torah? And then the second thing is, and if you do learn from it, that's if you write it down. And if you learn from that thing that someone wrote down, don't even think you're a tzaddik. You're not getting any schar for it. So, what is the pshat in this? So there's a Rashi. There's a few explanations in the Rishonim about this. But Rashi on the spot brings two perushim, and we'll learn the second perush. Why is it as if you're burning Torah? Says Rashi, you're not allowed to let it sit around. Because Dvarim sheBaal Peh, you have to keep Baal Peh. And if you write it down, you must burn it. You have to burn it. This is the pshat in the Gemara. You write down a Chiddush Torah, you must burn it. Or put it in Geniza. Rashi says two things. Rashi doesn't mention that, but the other Rishonim mention it. Why is it? So this is like kind of like a technical thing. So what that happens is, in the end of the day, you burnt Torah. The deen is you created something that you have to burn. So it's as if you're burning Torah. That's the way it's Rashi explains the Gemara. There's another explanation. I'll just say The Rabbeinu Gershom, on the spot, also here on the Amud, he says, the deen is Baal Peh. You have to keep it Baal Peh. How could you write down something that's Baal Peh? So I was thinking, he doesn't really explain why is it as if you're burning Torah, but maybe, this is my own stomachache, so, till now I said just Gemara and Rashi, so, but now it's, I'm saying, so whoever wants to argue, feel free, but I'll argue back. When someone burns Torah, he takes Torah Shebechsav and he makes a Torah Shebal Peh, we understand that's terrible. The same thing is if you take Torah Shebal Peh and you create it in the Torah Shebechsav. The Gemara is coming to say it's equal. Just like we understand, how could you burn Torah? This is something written. The same thing is if you have something that's Baal Peh and you write it, how could you take something that's Baal Peh and put it on paper? It's not, you're using it in the wrong way. Exactly the same thing like the other way around. So this is just a pshat maybe in the Gemara.
Like meat, it's almost like kachim that becomes puzzle.
You have to burn it. Yeah, it has no existence.
And it's me'ila, that's why you get no schar, because you be moiled with fire. It's like me'ila.
Very good, very good. Yeah, it's also here. Just like kachim, nosar, all these things, they can't be here anymore. Torah Shebal Peh is something that cannot be, in a way, it cannot be here in a physical way. It has to be Baal Peh. The minute it's not Baal Peh, it's as if you're burning Torah, because you're taking it and putting it into words, in the paper. So that's pshuto of Gemara. So now, according to this, we start off with the story of the Kutzker. It doesn't sound so far off anymore, right? It's like not such a question. How could he do that?
Gemara.
Well, it's a Gemara.
But only he did it. I mean, it would.
So what's your name?
Alan.
Alan is coming with a opposition, right? No?
No, I'll tell you why.
And he's coming and asking the following. If it's so true, then why do we need to talk about the Kutzker? Why don't everyone do it? Why don't everyone do it? Every time you write down something, go ahead and burn it. What's the difference?
And why would you write it down in the first place if you know you're going to burn it? The whole
Another question is, why did he write it down at night? Why did he write it down? Why did he write it down if he knows he's going to burn it the next day? So there's another Gemara which comes off of this Gemara. And the Gemara says the following. The Gemara brings this in order to prove a point, also here and also in Gittin. And basically, the Gemara asks like this. There was something which some shuls still have. It's called a Sifrei Daftarta. Some, usually more old school shuls have like a Haftara, but it's on cloth. It's written on cloth, but it's only the Haftaros that they read on Shabbos and Yomim Tovim. It looks like Young Israel Cost. It's old shul, right? Usually old shuls have this, and it's only the Haftaros. And the Gemara asks, the Gemara, it's already was in the time of the Gemara, they had the Sifrei Daftarta, and the Gemara wants to ask, could you write only part of Torah and connect it? So the Gemara says, maybe even though it's not allowed, there is something that's called Eis Lasos LaHashem Heferu Torasecha. The Gemara says, Eis Lasos LaHashem Heferu Torasecha. What does that mean? So, the Gemara darshans this, that sometimes you need to do, in order to do La'asos LaHashem, something for Hashem, the right thing to do, what you need to do is Heferu Torasecha, to go against something halachically. And Rashi over there says, since shuls, the majority of shuls don't have money to buy all the haftaros, therefore we were matir to create this sefer of, we allowed people to create the sefer of Sefer Daftarta, but it's a Heferu Torasecha. It's the same thing here. Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, which they are those people which said these two things. One is Dvarim shebechsav you cannot say Baal Peh, and things that are Baal Peh you cannot say bechsav. And Rabbi Yochanan said that it's as if you're burning Torah. It's Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan said that you don't get any schar if you learn from it. Both of them used to read on Shabbos from. They used to look inside Sifrei Agadata on Shabbos. They used to look inside Agadata, which is like Torah Shabbal Peh, on Shabbos, read it, what it says. How could they do that? There are those that created this, that they didn't create it, but they were those that, these halachos are mentioned in their name, they knew these halachos. And still, they were looking inside Sifrei Agadata on Shabbos. So in the Gemara and Gittin, we're talking about Hilchos Muktzah, if these farm are even Muktzah. But how could they do it? So the Gemara says, Eis lasos la'Hashem heferu soresecha. People were forgetting the Torah, including Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Including in the time of Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, even Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. They couldn't remember everything anymore. So what did they have to do? In order that Torah shouldn't be forgotten totally in Am Yisrael, they had to write down Torah, but they said like this, Mutav te'aker Torah. A little bit of Torah should be, what's the translation for te'aker? Outrooted. Uprooted. Ve'al tishtakach Torah Yisrael. The whole Torah shouldn't be forgotten from Yisrael. And because of that, we're allowed to write down the Torah. And I'll pee this, we can write down, the Rishonim say here, the Rabbeinu Gershom, I think it is, he writes here, because of that, Rebbe wrote down the Mishnayos, and Rav Ashi and Ravina wrote down later on the Gemara, and there were people that wrote down the Brises, and later on, the Rabbeinu Gershom writes, B'kol dor v'dor, the Chachamim, I think it's Tosrid, he says, B'kol dor v'dor, the Chachamim wrote down the Torah because of this heter of Eis lasos la'Hashem heferu soresecha. Now, what is the reason originally? I mean, we have Torah Sheb'Ksav, we have Torah Sheba'al Peh, but why can't we? Why was it so important to keep this like this? The Torah Sheb'Ksav like Torah Sheb'Ksav, and Torah Sheba'al Peh like Torah Sheba'al Peh. What is the reason? So there's a Ritva which says the following. That the Ritva says the following. He says that Torah Sheb'Chsav has a lot of things that you will not be able to know it just from knowing the words. Because the way the Torah wrote it, there's Cheseros and Yeseros, and sometimes it's the order of the things that only when you're looking inside, you could figure out different limudim. So that's why, if you start saying Torah outside of Torah, you'll mess up Torah. Torah is written in a very accurate way, and the way we learn from it isn't very accurate of how things are written and the order. So that's why it's very important. But the things that we learn out of Torah, which is kind of like Torah Sheba'al Peh, he says if it will be written, people won't pay so much attention. I have it on my bookshelf. You know, who knows today phone numbers? Nobody, right? But every guy that lived 40 years ago knew 1,000 phone numbers by heart. Why? Because he couldn't it was like a hassle for him to look it up or write it down. He didn't have it like in his memory, so he remembered. So when someone told you, what's your name, where do you live, and what's your phone number, it was a very important question, and you remembered it, and you had different ways to remember it. You know, the numbers go like this and like that, and you know, with the zero is a number or not a number. All this came because people had to remember phone numbers. The same thing here, the Ritva says, because Torah is not written, so when people are delivering something to you, you'll pay much more attention, and you'll be medactic. Do you mean this or do you mean that? Because there's nowhere that I could just run to and not pay so much attention. And then the Ritva ends off with a very scary thing. He says, and if you write it down, then people will read it and change what it says. Like they'll read it, but they'll say, oh, you meant like this, you meant like that. That's because originally when a person writes it, he writes it the way now he has it. But if someone questions him, it could be he would have written it maybe different. I'm just suggesting. But when someone says to you something and you know that this is your only chance, you're going to ask him, is it like this exactly? And you'll memorize it 100 times. And then, when you deliver, you'll also be very careful how exactly you're delivering it, and people will question you. And that's how the Masorah will continue with all the Gufei Halachos. Another thing, which is very interesting, when someone has Torah Sheba'al Peh, you always feel connected to the previous generation. It's not just, okay, this is where it is. If I tell somebody, you know, if anybody's father told him, I have something, a story in the family, they go, all of a sudden you're connected to the family. If somebody comes and tells you, I have something from my Rebbe, that he got from his Rebbe, from Har Sinai, it's a strong connection. We have the book from Har Sinai and we have the things from Har Sinai. It's not just on the shelf. No. It's a strong connection. They say Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, when he used to learn Gemara, he said, Amar Abaye, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Har Sinai, kach v'kach v'kach. He was the whole time he was reminding himself, he's learning Abaye, which he's learning Torah Hashem. It's not learning what Abaye said, rather it's learning how Abaye understood Torah. When you have Torah Sheba'al Peh, this Nakuda you have much stronger. Now what, as they say, Malasot, people started forgetting. Sar Shel Shikha became stronger, one of the Rishonim says. And people started forgetting. The Galus happened. People are going down in their memory or how accurate they could be. So every Chachamim started to write down, the Chachamim of the generations are using this out through the generations. I heard there's a Chasam Sofer that writes somewhere years ago. I heard this. I was trying to find where is this Chasam Sofer. I couldn't find it. Maybe Moshe Mir, he's a big bucky in Chasam Sofer. Maybe he'll tell me afterwards where it is. He says that Rashi says here on Eis Lasus Hashem, Rashi says a fascinating thing. We say, Eis Lasus Hashem, okay, what should we do? Torah people today are not really as strong in their memory. Okay, you can write Torah. Rashi says, Kshe'osim hadavar l'shem kedushas Hashem. When people do this thing for the kedusha of Hashem, roi lehafer Torasecha, then it's roi lehafer Torah. So you have to have in mind l'shem kedushas Hashem. You can't just say, okay, I'll just write it down. You have to say l'shem kedushas Hashem. So I heard the Chasam Sofer says on this that if somebody writes a sefer, but let's say for kavod, for his own kavod, not only he has a problem that he's writing Torah for his kavod and not for the right purpose, but he's also over on this that dvarim sheba'al peh iyat rashai lekosva. Because the whole reason you can write it down is when you do it lasos la Hashem. When you do it l'shem kedushas Hashem. But if you do it for your own self, you still bump into this problem of dvarim shebeksav iyat rashai. It's as if you're burning Torah, and it's as if, and whoever learns from this does not get any schar. So now, okay, we covered why other people don't burn it while the Kotzker burnt it, and we covered how today the Jewish library is extremely open. I just want to add one thing just before. We are fortunate, let's say, with an art scroll, but there was a big argument in the early days. Should there be such a thing in Am Yisrael? Are we pushing the limits? This was because people were forgetting. Are we supposed to write down everything that anybody could just understand, or Torah you're supposed to sit down and sweat? So it takes you a little longer in the beginning, like learning a new language. So in the beginning, you learn a few more hours till when you'll get used to it. So the rabbis decided it was a big battle. Not all rabbis agreed to give the haskama. Art Scroll have many haskamos from Gdolei Olam. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein is there. Rabbi Yashiv has his haskama. There's many, but some were very careful about it. But, like, who said we're allowed to do this? Publish it to everybody, just like that. Even more so. There's a pasuk that says, the Gemara in Gittin brings down a pasuk, Echtav l'rubei Torah. Rabbi Yochanan learns this pasuk. This Rabbi Yochanan that we're learning about, he learns this pasuk like this, Echtav l'rubei Torah. I cannot write down Rov Torah, because kemo zorim nechshabu. What does this pasuk mean? Again, literally the pasuk means, should I write down most of the Torah, which means Torah Sheba'al Peh? If I do that, it will be like zarim. It will be, how do you say zar in English?
Stranger.
Like a stranger. What does it mean? If I write it down, it will be like a stranger, so therefore I'm not writing it down. So Tosfos there says, on the daf samach amud beis in Masech Skidin, that he brings a medrash, the little bit of Torah shebechsav that we have, Goyim translate it, take it, they come and they say, we have Torah. Says HaKadosh Baruch says it's a pasuk, Echto l'rubi Torah, if you start writing down Torah Sheba'al Peh, also that the Goyim will take. Also that they will come and say. And they did take it. They did take it. So even more so when we have this art school, so we are fortunate. It brings many people to learn Torah, and I don't know if there would have been the MetLife Stadium without art scroll, but we should just understand the significance of what we're dealing with. This is a major, major thing. There's Torah Shebechsav and there's Torah Sheba'al Peh. What's your question?
Just to add, there's a pasuk I was listening to a shir today about the Torah Sheba'al Peh, how there's no way you could learn the Torah Shebechsav without it. Like Yom Kippur, how do you paint yourself? You chayav kares, but they don't tell you how you chayav kares. It has to be. And there's a pasuk in Torah, Magid Dvar Yaakov V'Chudo Nasan Yisrael. In other words, the Yidden have the information, but not the but the goyim are not supposed to get
Wow,
it.
mamish topping it up.
Yeah, I forgot where the pasuk is, but it goes something
Magid
like
Dvar Yaakov, Chukov Mishpatav Yisrael.
and then what's the end of the pasuk?
Lo yasachen lechol goy mishpatim bal yadaum. Hallelujah. We say it's in we say it's in Pesukah de Zimra on Shabbos. I
Yeah,
think.
exactly.
Pesukah de Zimra on Shabbos.
So that's the
There you go.
pasuk that the Rav was quoting. That's the reason why Torah Shabbat Peh is not known by the guys. Torah Shabbat everybody has it. The
Right.
Christians, the guys on the streets have it. The Gideon Bible have it. It's the wrong version of it. It's mistranslated, but they got it from somewhere.
Right. So topping up. Okay. So now we covered something. We covered how could we write down Torah Shabbal Peh? How could we write it down and how it's okay? Today, Salas Al Shem, the Gemara already paskins this. We have this halacha. Okay, very good. But what about the other way around? There's Torah Shabbachsav, Iyat Arashai Lo Mal Peh. Any of us ever said Kriya Shema? Just, without looking inside, without reading it inside. Any of us said Pesukah de Zimra, I know Ashrei by heart. I run into Landos. The Chaz is about to start. I don't go for a Siddur. Shmona Esrei, I'm for sure with tons of Kavana, and I'm like, so I'm with my eyes closed, right? Ashrei is the only thing I need to look inside. Do I look inside? It's Pesukim. How do I do this?
Say that you can't do it by heart. You have to look at the.
Dvarim Shabbachsav, Yet Rasha Lomar Al Peh. All the hetters Al Peh we're forgetting. You have to write down. But what's with the other way around? We have Torah Shabbachsav, which that's Tanakh. How can we do that? Many psukim we say. Az Yashir and Pesukah de Zimra. Do we look inside?
We're supposed to look inside.
But Pashtus, according to this, how could it be? There's so many things which we say. So this question, the Tur addresses in Siman Dalid in Orach Chaim, which is kind of the beginning of Orach Chaim. He addresses this question, and the Shulchan Aruch brings it. Ma she'anu nohagim lomar, ma she'tiknu lomar, Parshas Tamid every morning, and the other things we could say about. How can we say about Peh?
Akeda.
Akeda he doesn't write there.
Right.
He only writes 3 things over there, I think. But Simon Dalad. Simon Memtes. Sorry. Simon Memtes or Chaim. Simon Memtes. How can we say this? The reason I remember Memtes is because I was like, okay, I have to remember the Simon, because we spoke about memory. How could I remember the Simon? This Simon is a checkmate. It's Memtes. You have to know this because it's talking about things you're supposed to look inside and not forget. All right, so what in Simon Memtes? How could you say? It says the Torah brings down 2 reasons why we could say these specific things, which is Parshas Tamid, Kriya Shema, and another one, maybe Vayosha Hashem. I don't remember now. But there's 3 things which he quotes we could say. And he says 2 things. One answer, B'Shem his uncle, because these things everybody know. And if everybody knows something, it's not a problem. Another answer the Torah brings, B'Shem his father, is only what the problem of Dvarim Shebeksav Iyat Arasha Lomar Al Peh is when you want to motzi yedei acherim chova. When you want to motzi yedei acherim chova,
Like laning.
Very good, like laning, then it's a problem. But if you're just doing it for yourself, it's not a problem. And the Torah writes that the Minhag in Ashkenaz, because of this answer, the Minhag in Ashkenaz, the Chazan in those days, even in the time of the Torah, he used to motzi everyone. He used to sit silent in shul, and the Chazan used to motzi everybody till Shmona Esrei. When he got to the psukim of Mi Chamocha before Shmona Esrei, he was quiet, and everybody said it for themselves. Why? Because the Chazan cannot be motzi them. So the Birkos Kriya Shema and V'yatzi V'nachon he said for everybody. But when he got to these psukim, which are Torah Shebichsaf, he cannot motzi other people Ba'al Peh. They didn't have Sidurim, but each person can say it for himself Ba'al Peh. So this is the Torah says, that's why the Minhag in Ashkenaz is that these psukim, the Chazan is quiet and everyone say it for themselves because of this thing. Okay? So there's 2 terutzim that understands exactly the explanation of this psukim. I'll leave for everybody to think themselves and have what to sleep on. But there's a fascinating question in the Radbaz. The Radbaz, whoever doesn't know, I found out today that he was the Rebbe of the Ari HaKadosh. Ari had a Rebbe, his name was the Radbaz. He lived in Egypt most of his life. He came to Israel, to Eretz Yisrael when he was either 74 or 94. Different explanations when exactly, different stories when exactly came when he was an older guy. He was an extremely wealthy guy. He came originally to Yerushalayim, and the Sultan, the Arab Sultan there, saw that as a wealthy guy. He put on him extra taxes. So what does a Jew do that you put on him extra taxes, city taxes? He moves to Florida. Then he went to Tzfas, and that's where he met a bunch of people. I think the Beis Yosef and the Ari and other people. Now, it could be it was the Ari's Rebbe in Mitzrayim. I'm not sure, but he was the Rebbe of the Shita Mekubetzes or B'tzal Ashkenazi. But the Radbaz has a question in his Tshuva, Siman Aleph, Reish Hey, I think. The Magen Avram brings it on this Siman of Nuntes. Someone asked him, when the Chazan reads the Laning in Shul, am I allowed to say Baal Peh with him? The Chazan is reading. Am I allowed to say with him, Baal Peh, the words for my Shnai Mikra, let's say? We're not, what? At the same time. I know about Ve'ela Shemos. I can't say the whole pasuk, right? This year it's inappropriate to say that. But I know somewhat, and when there's a guy reading, when there's a Baal Korah reading, I could kind of follow with him and fill in all the words. I don't either. In those days there was no chumashim, or I'm just lazy about a chumash, or I like to pace, so pacing with the chumash is a little harder. So I'll just say with the Chazan, is there a problem of dvarim shebichsav iyat rashay lo marapeh? This is a question that was asked to the Radbaz, and he answers the following. He says, I for myself I'm achmir, but if I see other people doing it, I don't mochen them. I don't do a mecha. Why? So he brings because there's a Yerushalmi that says that it's because you'll mess up the words, and here they're hearing that. But why doesn't he say it? He said that's why he doesn't mochen them. But why for himself he's machmir? Because the Bavli doesn't bring this reason. It's mashma that we don't hold of it. Then he says, and if you listen to me, don't do it. Why? There's an inyan of kinesinasa. We have to learn Torah like it was given. And there's a Gemara in Brachos which is famous. Ma'ab nesinasa be'ema be'yira. We spoke about this once. The way Torah was given, we have to learn it. It wasn't just Torah. There was a delivery of how we got the script of how Torah is, and now we're learning Torah. But the delivery of Torah, the delivery was part of it. And the delivery was Biksav. We have to learn it Biksav. The delivery was Be'ema Be'yira. We have to do it Be'ema Be'yira.
We know about the Aseret difference.
Says the Radbaz. We got Torah Shebiksav. We got it Biksav. That's how Hashem gave it to us. Well, what exactly happened in Har Sinai is a great topic for a different week.
You're talking about.
We got Torah Shebiksav as Torah Shebiksav.
Okay, not
that's how we should read it, even though it's a din of Kenesinasa. That's the reason that the Radbaz for himself, he was machmir. Because no matter what, Torah Shebiksav, we should read Shebiksav. So this is just something which we should remember for ourselves. It's not so simple if we want to just read psukim, we know psukim. The Radbaz himself, just want to end off with this, and this thing he says, people for sure could say Tehillim Baal Peh. Why? What?
Everybody knows it.
So that's, other posts can say because of that, but he says, everybody knows some Tehillim, but do you know?
It's well established. It's a
okay.
go-to. It's a go-to.
That's one explanation. But he says when you do it derech tefillah, Tehillim you're doing for tefillah. You're not doing it for learning. If you're going to learn Tehillim, if you're going to do what's shir hamalos beshuv hash, like you're reading it as a learning. Like let's learn Tehillim. Like let's learn any other sefer in Tanakh. Then it will be a problem. But when you do it, when you learn it, when you just read it as a tefillah. On tefillah, there isn't the problem of dvarim shebeksav iyat harosh marapeh. It's just on divrei Torah. So just to sum everything up, what do we have from this? What do we walk away from? First of all, we understand the Kotzker. It's one good thing came out from the whole shir. Another thing is to understand the significance of Torah shebeksav versus Torah sheba'al and the importance of each one, and just to be aware, we have a Torah shebeksav. Hashem gave it to us biksav, and so we have this Torah. And Torah Sheba'al Peh, really, the real way that we have it is Ba'al Peh, with all the seriousness of exactly what it is and how it is, and connecting to the previous generation, And when we go through the week, and go through the Shnai Mikra this week, as we saw that there's a remez this week, Shnai Mikra Ve'echad Targum Ve'ele Shemos, we should take it with us and look different on the chashivus of our Mesorah and the chashivus of Torah. Everyone should have a good Shabbos.
It's so fun. I was listening to a shir today about how you need to have Torah Shabbat